Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, in the last 30 years, around 30 years, we've been hearing frequently about human rights and talking about countries who have human rights violation, human rights abuses. Even in the United States, we talk about human rights violation and all of that. So what is Islam's position on human rights? Is this something the modern world is talking about, new civilization, or is it something that's a part of Islam? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He sent Islam, He laid down some rights that are for all people as human beings. Doesn't matter what your religion or you don't believe in religion. There is human rights for every human being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. The first one we'll talk about is the right to life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. If anyone kills a soul for other than manslaughter, murdering another person, or corruption on earth, it is if he had killed all mankind. When you kill one innocent person, it's like you killed all human beings. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. And do not kill the soul which Allah has forbidden to be killed except for justice. If you notice in all the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he's using the word nafs. Nafs means soul, person, which means any human being. Allah didn't say a Muslim. He said nafs. Any human being that I created, you're not supposed to take their life away. You're not. Because if you do that, it's like you killed all humanity. Another right in the Islam is the right to freedom. In a hadith Qudsi, a divine hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am the opponent of three on the day of the resurrection. Opponent means I'm going to be the one standing accusing people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be accusing people. Three kind of people. I'm going to mention one of them, which is in the hadith. It said, he who enslaves a free man, then sells him and eats his money. Any person who takes somebody who's free and make him a slave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will stand on the day of judgment and accuse him that he didn't obey and he did a major sin, that he took the freedom of somebody. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, why do you enslave people when their mothers had brought them into this world as free? You're not supposed to take the freedom of any human being. Compare that to what happened in our modern day civilization. Between 1680 and 1786, almost 1 century, it has been estimated that the total number of people who were captured and sold for slavery by the various European nations, mostly England, France, Spain, and Portugal. They were the main ones. Estimated the number of people they enslaved, more than 100 million people. And most of them from Africa. As a matter of fact, they were telling that in the transportation, when they're carrying them in ship, 20% of them died and they threw them in the sea. Took their freedom, they are worthless, throw them in the sea. 20 million of them were brought to America here and used as slaves. And many of them, unfortunately, were Muslims. But they were forced to be Christian, otherwise they will be whipped every day. So they were forced to become Muslim, taking away the freedom of people, and we're calling it a civilization. That's not Islam. Another right is the right to safety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering people not to steal, not to cheat, not to terrorize others. And you can read it in all the holy books. It's in the Torah, it's in the Injil, it's in the Quran. It's consistent because people have the right to safety. They cannot feel terrorized and worried. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to save people. So He's saying, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. And if anyone saved a soul, a person, it is if he had saved all mankind. So if you see somebody in trouble, drowning, or need help, or whatever, you cannot say, he's not a Muslim. No. You are supposed to help that person, because if you do, it's like you saved all humanity. And the Prophet ﷺ told us, the Muslim is the one from whose tongue and hand the people are safe. And the believer is the one from whom the people's lives and wealth are safe. So Muslim, your main obligation is to ensure the safety of the people around you. Anybody around you should feel safe when you're there, because safety is a human right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to protect. Compare that to some other religions. Some people, they take in the religion, they're saying, like Jewish religion, they say non-Jew enjoy no human rights. Human rights is only limited to the children of Israel. So if you're not a Jew, stealing your money is fine. Cheating you, it's fine. Doing anything is fine. And Allah is telling us that in the Quran. He said about the Jews, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا لَيْسَ عَلَيْنَا فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ سَبِيلٌ وَيَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. Because they say there is no blame on us for anything we may do with regard to the non-Jew, and they tell a lie against Allah while they know it. So you cannot do that. Islam is not like that. Islam is applicable to everybody. We're consistent. You cannot be an honest person who's a Muslim and a cheater with another one, or a liar. We are not hypocrite as Muslims. We have one personality, and it's consistent whether it's a Muslim or non-Muslim. And another right is the right of privacy in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تدخلوا بيوتا غير بيوتكم حتى تستأنسوا وتسلموا على أهلها. O you who believe, do not enter houses other than your own house until you have asked permission and greeted those in them. So the safety of the privacy of other people, you cannot just walk in onto somebody. No, you cannot. You have to ask permission. There is privacy, and it has to be protected. And the same Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, and do not spy on one another. So you cannot spy on any other person. Their privacy is a right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, protect the privacy of others. You cannot be a nosy neighbor. You cannot be a neighbor that when you hear some noise on the other side of your fence, you bring a chair and go up on the chair to look what's going on. You cannot. As a Muslim, the right of privacy has to be protected of everybody. If it's something that doesn't concern you, you don't need to know about it. People who sit and gossip all the time about other people, the right of privacy is violated, and then you're not doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to do. The right of women. In Islam, women have rights, and that's a part of the human rights. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. And they, women, have rights similar to those of men over them in a just manner, and men have a degree above them. What is that degree? It's not a degree of superiority that Allah created two gender and one of them is better than the other. And if you're born a man, oh, lucky you. If you're born a woman, hard luck, it's too bad. No. The degree that we are higher is the degree of responsibility and protection. We have that responsibility. It's that degree that we are above women, to protect them and be able to take care of them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. The believing men and believing women are protectors, guardians of one another. So we have to treat women, they have rights, and we have to protect their rights. And the Prophet ﷺ in his last khutbah, the khutbah al-Hajj, the khutbah al-Wada', on the day of Hajj, he said to them, all the Muslim gathered there, fear God regarding women. So what does it mean? It means that what we hear in the last few weeks should not be happening in any place around us. We hear about the mistreatment of women. We hear about the abuse that women are going through, the harassment, the rape, all those things. We hear it what? Politicians, people in the media business, actors, all of those people. We hear it about in sports, all of those things. We've been listening to that the last 3 weeks. And it's horrible. This is not the right of women. This is not human rights. Human rights is to protect the dignity and respect of all women. As a matter of fact, the modern civilization, women here in America, 80 years ago, they were allowed to vote. Before that, they had no rights. They cannot vote, they cannot own property, nothing. But Islam, from 1400 years ago, is saying women have rights. And that's human rights. Another thing is the right to a basic standard of living. That you should be able to live, should be able to eat, you should be able to have a shelter, a roof over your head. It's really amazing that we're talking about human rights and we live in the richest country in the world. And there is so many homeless people sleeping on the streets. I see everywhere I go, on corners, people with signs asking for donation, for food, for money. And we live in the richest country, and we talk about human rights all the time. What is the human rights of those people? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying about the real Muslim, the true Muslim who fear Allah. He's saying, وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. And in their wealth, there is the right of the beggar and the deprived, the poor. Every Muslim who fear Allah knows that. That's why we pay zakat. We pay zakat because we owe that to the poor. They have to have a good standard of living. I'm not saying they have to have a Mercedes and a 5-car garage house or anything. No, but should be able to eat. They should be able to have a roof. This is human right. It's not a luxury. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to do in Islam. The right to justice. In Islam, no man should ever fear injustice. And every human being, everywhere, should be treated with justice and fairness. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ لِلَّهِ شُهَدَاءَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنْآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. O you who believe, stand out firmly for Allah, witnesses in justice. And do not let the hatred of a people prevent you from being just. You cannot say, because he's not a Muslim, then I'm going to be unjust to him. You cannot say, because I hate him, I'm not going to be just to him. You cannot, because Allah is saying, if you are going to stand up for justice, you are one of my witnesses. You're representing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're making justice on earth. So justice is a right for every human being. You cannot take it away from people. You cannot say the Constitution covered the people of this country, but if you're from another country, too bad, nothing applies to you. We'll throw you in jail and we don't care. No, there is human rights and apply to every human being. Another right is the right to equality. No discrimination, no mistreatment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ وَأُنْثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. O mankind, we have created you of a male and a female and made you tribes and families that you may know each other. Surely the most honorable of you with Allah is the one among you who is best in conduct. So Allah is telling us, you're all the children of a man and a woman, Adam and Eve, Adam alayhi salam. Allah did not create a white Adam and Eve and a black Adam and Eve and a pink Adam and Eve. It's one, Adam and Eve. From those two, all humanity came. So to discriminate against somebody because of the color of their skin or whatever, or the look of their face, their eyes or whatever, this is not Islam. This is not Islam. There is a human right. We're all brothers and sisters coming from the same father and the same mother. So we have to respect and protect that right to every human being. And the Prophet ﷺ in the same khutbah, the last khutbah he gave in the Hajj, he said, all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, nor does a black have any superiority over a white, except by piety and good action. That's it. Your color means nothing. Your outside look means nothing. Tell me your character, then you're better than me or you're worse than me. But without your character, everything outside means nothing. Even your wealth means nothing. Your character is what counts. And that's the way we should treat people. Not because he's from my country, he's the same color of skin, or because he speaks the same language, then I treat him differently. No. How he's behaving. Is he behaving in a decent way? His character. Is it according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger ordering us to do? Then yes, that person should be admired and respected. Another right is the right to dignity, to respect. That you should not mistreat people and humiliate them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, and surely we have honored the children of Adam. Allah honored all children of Adam. There is none of them is not honored. So we should not humiliate what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored. How can we dare do that? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكون خيرا منهن ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب. O you who believe, let not some men ridicule, laugh, make fun at other men, perhaps they may be better than them. Nor let some women ridicule, laugh, make fun of at other women, perhaps they may be better than them. And do not defame one another, nor insult one another by offensive nicknames. Don't humiliate anybody. Don't. Because that's a right that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving everybody. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving to everybody. Some people think, what's the big deal? I'm just calling him a name. We hear our president all the time calling people names. Crooked Hillary, short, I don't know what, the guy of Korea. All those, everybody's calling them. Little Rubio, everybody's calling them names. That's not our Islam. We don't make fun of people. We don't call them names that are offensive to make ourselves feel better, to make ourselves feel great, to humiliate others. That's not Islam. The dignity and respect of every human being is a right that we should not take away. Another right is the right to worship, freedom of religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي. There is no compulsion, no force in religion. Truly the right path has become evident, clear from the wrong path. And he said in another verse, وَقُلُوا الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Say the truth is from your Lord. Let him who will believe and let him who will disbelieve. You cannot force anybody. Anybody can worship whatever they want. You want to worship, you don't want to worship, you don't believe in God, you believe, you want to worship a rock. It's your right. Freedom of religion is a right to every human being. It's up to you to decide. Nobody should force another person, you should be on my religion. You should be a Muslim. You should be a Christian. You should be a Buddhist. No. That's a human right to worship whatever you feel you want to worship. Nobody should force you to worship anything else. Another right is the right to freedom of speech. And in Islam, it's kind of funny because most of the Muslim countries don't have freedom of speech. If Islam is telling us freedom of speech is a right for every human being. And the best example we have when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, wanted to create Adam. The angels said to Allah, "Oh Allah, you are going to create a new creation that's going to create, sow corruption, spread corruption on earth, and going to spill blood, kill people." Even though all creation fear Allah, angels fear Allah, shaitan fear Allah, trees fear Allah, seas fear Allah, land fear Allah. So all of them fear Allah. But Allah is encouraging freedom of speech. Even shaitan, Satan, he stood up and said to Allah, قَالَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. He said, I am better than him. You created me from fire and you created him from clay. If Allah didn't want freedom of speech, the angel would have not been able to say a word. Shaitan would have not been able to say a word. But Allah wants people to speak freely. And He's giving us that right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ, and who conduct their affairs by mutual consultation. Allah wants everybody to give their opinion. He wants everybody to speak freely. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, companions were saying him all kind of different things. This guy is saying, no, we should go right. This way is saying, we should go left, whatever. And then finally, the Prophet ﷺ makes a decision. But there is freedom of speech. He didn't say, nobody say anything. I am the Prophet. No. Freedom of speech. Everybody has the right to speak up and say their opinion without anybody forcing them to stay silent. But there is a difference between a freedom of speech that the world now is talking about, the West specifically is promoting, and the Islamic freedom of speech. Islamic freedom of speech, there is control on freedom of speech. There is control, there is rules that you should follow in having freedom of speech. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. Allah does not like the public mention of evil or speaking bad words except by one who has been wronged. He's angry. But if you're not angry, you don't have any reasons, injustice will not committed against you, you should not use abusive words. And Allah is saying, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and argue with them in the best manner. So don't use bad words. There is a limit to what you can do. It's not, you say, it's freedom of speech, I'm going to call you, insult you. And then when somebody say this is wrong, oh, it's freedom of speech. I'm going to say whatever I want, lies about you. Freedom of speech. No, Islam is saying there is rule and regulation. Yes, speak up your mind, say everything you want, but within the guidelines that you protect the other people. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was sitting with the companion and he said to them, do you know what backbiting is? They said, Allah and His Messenger know best. He said, it is to say something about your brother that he would dislike. Dislike. Only dislike. If you said something that your brother dislike, then this is backbiting. So one of the people sitting, he said, but what if what I say is true? So the Prophet ﷺ said, if what you say about him is true, you are backbiting him. But if it's not true, then you have slandered him, and this is a major sin. You slandered him. Because Islam, protecting the reputation of every human being and their honor, is a very high priority. It's not, I can say anything about somebody and get away with it under freedom of speech. No. Freedom of speech has to have control and has to have rules. Otherwise, it's abuse. Because then, if somebody is decent and somebody goes and say everything bad about you and you get away with it, what kind of society you're going to live in? So some people are going to say, but the modern world has all kind of constitution, they have declarations, they have all those kind of things. So the modern world, they have those same things. And it implied that, the problem is most of those constitution and declaration are made applicable only to the citizen of this country. And sometimes the citizen of this race. As a matter of fact, when the Constitution of the United States was made, it was applicable only to white Christian men. That's it. If you're not white or Christian or a man, the Constitution doesn't apply to you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Constitution applies to every human being, not certain people. And a lot of time, human rights that are in Constitution and Declaration are used selectively. And they are used when it's convenient. Look at the history here in America. In 1942, President Roosevelt, he issued an order to take all people who are from Japanese origin, American citizen, and lock them up. All of them. What about the Constitution? No. What about human rights? Forget it. So human rights is used selectively when it's convenient. Discrimination against African American. The Constitution didn't protect African American. Until in 1964, they passed the Civil Rights Act that says you cannot legally discriminate. Before that, we all know bathroom for white and bathroom for colored people. On the bus, seats for white and seats for black people or colored people. Everywhere, restaurant for white and restaurant for colored people. That's the Constitution. But that's not Allah's Constitution. So we cannot do that. As a matter of fact, even look at our foreign policy. Our foreign policy, we use human rights selectively. So when we are angry with a country, we go after them. You're violating human rights. When we're friends, we forget it. China, when we're getting into argument with them and we have some problem with them, we argue with them, you have human rights violation. Now we need China's help with North Korea. We don't talk about human rights. So it's selectively used. Rex Tillerson, who is the Secretary of State of the United States, he said, advancing human rights across the globe creates obstacles to our ability to advance our national security and interest. So he's saying we use it selectively. When it's convenient for us and good for us, we talk about human rights. But that's not Islam. Islam, whether it's convenient for you or not convenient for you, human rights should be protected. I'm sure some of you say, you're talking about Islam, look at what's happening in Muslim countries. And I agree with you. But we have to remember, we have to separate Islam from Muslims. Islam is perfect. Muslims have all kinds of problems. We have all kinds of flaws. And Muslim countries are called Muslims, but they don't follow Islam. In Islam, every man, whether he belongs to this country or that, whether he's a believer or a non-believer, whether he lives in some forest or in the desert, he has some basic human rights, simply because he is a human being. In fact, it is the duty of every Muslim to make sure that those rights are protected and never taken away from them and from any human being.